Have you ever walked into a job interview and suddenly you forgot everything you wanted to say, and suddenly your heart's racing, your hands are sweaty, and the more you try to sound confident, the worse it gets. We've all been there, but I want to help you fix that. So today I'm going to over 11 hacks that public speakers use to sound more confident and help you sound more confident in your next interview. My name's Rob. I am a recovering corporate HR professional. All right, I do use the word professional a little bit loosely, but I've had the opportunity to work at some amazing companies over my career. And I am on a mission to share what I've learned at those places with you so you can land that dream job, get that promotion, or just navigate corporate life. So let's jump into it. So today, again, I'm talking about 11 confidence boosting hacks that public speakers use, right? Because we can all agree public speaking is probably one of everybody's top 10, maybe top 2 fears. So let's talk about the first thing. The first thing is we want to focus on confidence and first impressions. So let's talk about that power pose, right? And yes, I am talking about Wonder Woman and Superman, right? And no, I'm not saying go in there and put your hands on your hips and pretend, your theme song is playing in the background. But what I am saying is, if you're in an in-person interview and you're in that waiting room, don't sit down on the couch, slouched over, kind of fidgeting around. Stand up, look professional, stand up straight, right? Waiting for them to come out, because that's going to be their first impression of you, right? And also, while you're in that reception room, pay attention to how you treat the person at the reception desk, because that is part of your interview. And I'm going to do a whole other video on kind of some hidden ways that recruiters actually evaluate you. But we're going to focus on your confidence for this video. So stand up straight, look confident, put your feet at shoulders distance apart, and you will actually start feeling that way, right? So again, that power pose is super important. And now if you're on a Zoom interview, the same thing, right? You're sitting there ready, all your tech is set up, and you're making sure you're sitting up straight. You're not fidgeting around, right? Watching that clock tick down until they join. You want their first impression of you to be somebody who exudes confidence. So sit up straight, put your hands there, and wait. All right. So the next one is called the Lighthouse method. Now, what I mean by this is, say you're in a dreaded panel interview, right? So you've got 4 or 5 people on this panel, and you want to make sure that you're including them and bringing them into your conversation, making sure they feel important. So if somebody asks you a question, yes, address them, but also look at all the other people. It's super important to engage them and draw them into the answer. It's subtle, but again, people subconsciously appreciate it. So think about that. Now, if you do find yourself public speaking as part of your interview, right? Pick certain people around the room and keep referring back to them. That will show you're confident and you've prepared for this interview, okay? Now, the 3-part open, right? Again, we're talking about first impressions, and you've got the first dreaded question, right? And that is, tell me about yourself. We all hate that. I've talked about this in other videos, but there it is. Now, it is fraught with traps, so don't go personal, but practice this. This is something you can anticipate as a question. So practice it. And what you want to do is have a 3-parter, right? You've got the hook, you're sharing a story about your experience, and then you've got how can it apply to them in this role, right? So think about me. So if I did my opener, I would start with a hook and I'd say, hey, you know what? I started school out to be a pilot, and then I segued into HR, right? So that's intriguing. People are usually very, very interested in that, and are like, how bizarre, I want to know more, right? Then I talk about my experience at all these great companies, and then I go into how can I bring this experience to be an asset to your organization, right? So I tie it up in a bow. Now, I don't ramble. I get in, I get out, right? And I leave them with just enough information so they want to know more. And the best thing in that example is if they start asking you, hey, Rob, tell me more about, how you went from being a pilot to being in HR, right? Then I can expand upon that. So think about it. It's that 3-part opening, right? The hook, share your experience, and then share how you can bring your experience and be an asset to that organization and that position. Now we're going to get into a section. The next few hacks are around answering questions with impact, because that's really important. You start off strong, that's super important, but you've got to maintain that energy level throughout the whole interview. So the fourth rule is the rule of threes, right? You want to have memorable responses. Structure your answers with 3 clear points versus a rambling response. For example, when asked about your strengths, you may say, hey, I bring problem-solving skills, leadership experience, and adaptability, right? Get in and get out. The mind subconsciously goes to answers that are in threes, right? Or things that are in sets of 3. So get in, talk about those things, and get out. And hopefully, again, like I said in the last example, the panel or the interviewer will say, hey, well, tell me more about your leadership experience. That's really important to this role, right? And now we're in a back and forth conversation versus they give a question, you give an answer, right? So think about that. So now the next one is nonverbal communication. And this is called the palm up principle. And I've kind of been doing it now, right? If I sat here and did this and I slouched in my chair, how much confidence would you say I'm exuding right now? But alternatively, if I'm sitting up and I'm talking like this, I'm inviting people in. It's the same way speakers on stage do, make the audience come, are invited into the conversation and they're part of the conversation. The same thing happens in an interview, right? Avoid folding your arms. Even if you're nervous and that kind of makes you feel better, try to avoid doing that. And this is where practice comes in, right? You want to make sure, practice in front of a mirror. As corny as it sounds, it does help. Or have other people give you feedback, right? So no crossed arms, sit up straight. Your hands say a lot about your confidence. Open palm gestures when explaining something makes you appear trustworthy and approachable. And if you can show how you're starting to build trust with the interview team, that's going to, again, invite them in and want to know more about you. So think about those things. Think about your body language from the time you hit the front door to the time you sit down and until the time you leave. That's super important. It's subtle, but people will take notice. Let's move on to number 6, the power pause, right? And I just did one, right? So the thing is, we all have words that we kind of are anchor words, right? The words that were kind of filler words. So it's I say right a lot. I say and things like that, right? When I'm trailing off on a sentence or a list of things. So try to avoid that. So you can take a pause and collect your thoughts. So somebody asks you a question, you don't have to instantly come up with the answer, right? You can take a moment to think about it, right? And you might even just say it, hey, you know what? Let me think that through for a second because I want to really give you a relevant answer. Then you pause for a second and you collect your thoughts and you go. That actually also signals to the interview panel that you're very thoughtful in your responses. You're not just giving something that's canned or something that they may want to hear, right? You're actually reflecting on the question and then giving them a thoughtful response. So be thinking about those types of things too. And again, practice, practice, practice. That's where you're going to really walk. If you practice enough and put some time into it, you're going to walk into that interview with confidence from the first minute to the last minute. I promise you. Let's go on to the 7th hack, and that is the 2-minute story rule. Sometimes we get in, I've had candidates sitting there and they don't have a good answer, but they start rambling and they start talking in circles. And it is an unmitigated disaster as from an answer perspective. So people love stories. We're going to gravitate to stories. So tell them a specific story, right? Tell them specifically. Oh, the other thing too, before I get into the specifics, is avoid starting your story with I usually, or I woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's going to basically signal to the interview team or the interviewer that you've got nothing specific, so you're drawing on generalities, right? So tell them a specific time. Hey, during this job, this is what happened. This was the problem we were presented with. Here's the action we took and the tasks we were all assigned. And here was my role specifically. And then here were the results of that. And keep it under 2 minutes. So again, this is where practice comes into play because you don't want to take this person on a 15-minute dissertation when the story can be summed up in 2 minutes. And if you've given enough nuggets in those 2 minutes, then people are going to be asking follow-up questions. Hey, when you said this, tell me more of how that actually worked out. And then you can kind of do a deeper dive. So that's going to set you up, again, for that conversational back and forth that is, in my opinion, a gold mine. The recruiters enjoy it, the interview panel enjoys it, and it puts you at more ease, and you feel more confident as a result. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. Don't start your stories with I always or I usually or I woulda, coulda, shoulda. Not going to end well for you. It's not going to be a great answer. Let's go on to kind of the next segment, which is about managing nerves and then ending on a strong note, because you want to start off strong, but you also want to end strong, right? So the 90-second reset, I've seen some public speakers do this, right? They take a minute, right, if things aren't going wrong, just to kind of reset themselves. In an interview, you may not have that opportunity. You can't just say, hey, can I go out and collect my thoughts and come back in? That's probably not going to go very well, but you can start that way. So before the interview time, maybe you excuse yourself, you go into the lobby or whatever it is, do some deep breathing, right? Reset your nervous system, right? So you can have a clear head walking in. Just take that 90 seconds, collect your thoughts, do some deep breathing, and then you'll walk in there with confidence. So that method actually works out really well. And if you are an anxious person or if you're an introvert, that will help you. It may not alleviate all of your anxiety, but it will definitely help. And then once you get in there and get going, that's the worst part, right? Is that those first few minutes that oh, what's happening? There's lots going on, right? If you can go in there with that calm sense, that's going to continue throughout the interview. The callback technique. I love this one. And it really shows that you're organized and well prepared when you are giving an answer. Say it's the third or fourth question in, and you reference an answer you gave before. That shows that you're actually thinking multidimensionally and pulling from your other stories, especially if it's a skill or experience you want to highlight, right? So you're telling them this story and you're saying, hey, remember before I mentioned blah, 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 and that pulls them back. It reminds them again about a key skill that you had. Now, it's a little bit of an art form to that. But again, if you practice, some of that stuff will come naturally. So again, reference those prior answers or prior points you made will actually make you show up really organized and well prepared. Now we're getting toward the end. We're at number 10. Stick around for number 11. And hey, by the way, if you like this type of content, I would be absolutely honored if you would like and subscribe to this channel, because it helps me out. And let me know how you're doing. Let me know what kind of things are going on in your interview process or in your career journey. I would love to hear that. I love to hear from the people I'm talking to out there. So let me know in the comments below. But on to number 10, right? So now you're feeling good. You're at the finish line of the interview. And you need to close with confidence. And this is the point where they're going to say, hey, now we've let some time at the end here for you to have any questions, candidate. So what questions might you have, right? So first of all, it's my advice, just take it or leave it, but avoid starting with the questions about benefits or PTO. Really, that could be saved for later time, maybe at the time of offer, if God willing you get there, those types of things. But really ask specifics about the individual panel members, right? Hey, how's your career journey been? Or what is it really like to work here? People love to talk about themselves, so that's engaging, could actually be an enriching dialogue, and you're going to glean a lot from that person you're talking to. Ask about the work environment. Ask about what pressing projects they have on the bubble that they're going to be, that this role would be required to, somebody in this role would jump in and have to really lean into that. So all of that is going to express your interest in the role and the organization. Plus, then don't forget, say thank you, right? Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. One question I love as a wrap up, is there anything we haven't talked about that you feel is really important for this role? And based on what their response is, some things, you could go either way. If they say, we've got all our information, that might not be the best signal, but don't fixate on it. But if they do say, well, hey, we really are interested in someone with X, then you can say, oh, I'm glad you brought that up, and here's some examples I can give you about that. But then once you're done with your questions, again, say thank you. I appreciate your time, and give a quick summary about why you're a right fit. Again, using that callback method, by pulling in the key points from what you talked about in the earlier parts of the interview. Okay, then my last hack actually should probably be the first hack, right? And this is the rehearsal part. So if you want to start off strong, the best thing you can do is practice your answer to the tell me about yourself question, right? If you start off strong, you're going to coast through the rest of the interview on that. You're going to ride that wave of feeling strong and confident. If you start off bumpy, it's really hard to recover from that in the moment. So my advice, get your concise elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it, the message that you want to lead with, and practice it, right? So it sounds very natural, very conversational. It doesn't need to sound scripted though, because you don't want somebody just reciting something they memorized. You really want it to be authentic. So practice that. You'll start off on a high note and cruise through the rest of the interview. And hopefully at the end of that interview, that panel is going to be like, we found our person and let's get them a job offer. So I hope this is super helpful for you. I know that it was helpful for me when I was public speaking and interviewing. So I hope you can take some nuggets out, and really the next time you're in front of an interview team or individual, you're approaching it with confidence, and it's just effortless, and it just rolls off your tongue, and you get that job offer very quickly. So, okay, with that, I hope each of you are well. I hope that you are getting, don't lose your resilience. Apply for the jobs. Those interviews will come. And let me know in the comments what you're struggling with, what I can celebrate with you. I hope your job search is going well. Again, if you're not getting those interviews right away, they will come. Just keep your chin up and really hang on to that resilience. It will be important. And when you do get the job interview, I hope all of the hacks that I just listed are helpful and you approach that with confidence. So if you like this type of content, I would be honored if you would give me a like, subscribe to the channel. I've got new episodes on Sundays and Thursdays. And again, I'm on a mission to share what I've learned at all those great companies with you to help you land your dream job, get that promotion, or just survive corporate America. So until next time, take care. This video was recorded and produced by Just Talk Studios, the premier video podcasting studio in Bellevue, Washington. Visit justtalkstudios.com to learn more and book your session today.